You've done this before. You start something with real fire. A workout plan, a business idea, a book you were finally going to write. The first few days feel almost euphoric. You can see the finished version of yourself already. And then, without any dramatic moment, without any single reason you could point to, you stop. Not because something went wrong, not because you got busy, you just stopped wanting it. Here's the question that should actually bother you. Where did that motivation go? It didn't get defeated. It didn't get talked out of anything. It just vanished, like it was never really yours to keep. What if it wasn't a loss at all? What if, in that exact moment you gave up, your brain did something on purpose? Motivation didn't fail you. It filed a report, and it shut the door. For a long time, the explanation for this was simple, and it was cruel. You're lazy. You lack discipline. Other people can push through. You can't. That explanation has a problem. It's completely wrong. In 2019, researchers at the University of Washington ran an experiment on mice that quietly demolished the laziness myth. The mice had to poke their snouts into a port to get a sip of sugar water. Easy at first, 1 poke, 1 reward. Then the researchers raised the price. 2 pokes, then 5, then more, until every single mouse eventually gave up. That part isn't surprising. Effort increases, reward stays the same, motivation drops. Obvious. Here's the part that isn't obvious. While recording neural activity, the researchers found the exact moment before each mouse quit, and something was firing. Not shutting down, firing. A cluster of cells called paranigral VTA nociceptin neurons lit up right before the break point, and they released a molecule that does one specific job. It suppresses dopamine. Quitting wasn't an absence, it was an injection. Your brain doesn't run out of motivation like a car running out of gas. It manufactures the shutdown, on purpose, chemically. You didn't lose the will to continue. Something in you voted to stop, and it won. Why would evolution build something so self-sabotaging? Because it isn't self-sabotage, it's accounting. Your brain is roughly 2% of your body weight and burns about 20% of your daily energy. That's an absurd ratio, and it means your brain has spent millions of years terrified of running a deficit. Long before there were deadlines or dumbbells, energy was survival, literally. A brain that overspent on a fruitless task in the wild didn't get a productivity lecture. It got outcompeted or it starved. So your brain built an internal accountant. Every demanding task gets silently appraised. What's this going to cost me, and what am I actually going to get back? If the cost outweighs the payoff, the answer isn't try harder. The answer is nociceptin, and the door closes. You don't feel this as arithmetic. You feel it as, I just don't want to anymore. Your brain isn't trying to ruin your future. It's trying to protect your present. But here's where it gets stranger. Because that accountant isn't only judging the task, it's judging who the task is even for. Ask yourself something. When you picture yourself finishing that goal, thinner, richer, published, done, who exactly are you picturing? Neuroscientist Hal Hershfield ran brain scans to find out, and the results are almost embarrassing. When people think about their present self, one brain region activates, the rostral medial prefrontal cortex. When they think about a random stranger, a different pattern shows up. When they think about their future self, the stranger pattern. Your brain does not file you in 10 years under you. It files it under someone else. Some other person who you've never met, who is going to have to deal with the consequences of whatever you decide not to do today. That's why future you will thank you has never once worked as a motivator. You're not withholding effort from yourself. You're donating your workload to a stranger, and strangers' problems have never kept anyone up at night. You're not procrastinating on yourself. You're procrastinating on a stranger, wearing your face. This is called temporal discounting, the brain's tendency to violently undervalue anything that isn't happening right now. And it explains something that should feel familiar: why deadlines work when nothing else does. As a deadline closes in, that future stranger stops being distant. He becomes you, right now, about to suffer the consequence. The discount collapses to zero. Suddenly, the same task that felt optional for 3 weeks becomes urgent in the final 3 hours. Not because you found willpower, but because your brain finally recognized the person paying the price. So if giving up is a calculated shutdown and procrastination is a handoff to a stranger, what's actually deciding when to pull the trigger? Not logic, emotion, and it moves faster than you do. Every task that feels boring, uncertain, or humiliating gets flagged by your amygdala, the brain's threat detector. And your amygdala does not distinguish well between "this spreadsheet is uncomfortable" and "this is a physical danger." Discomfort is discomfort. It sounds the alarm either way. Here's the unsettling detail. Researchers using EEG have caught this happening before you consciously decide to procrastinate. Seconds before your hand reaches for your phone, your frontal theta power drops, your brain's daydreaming network takes over, and your intention to work quietly loses the fight, all before you're aware a fight even happened. You don't decide to procrastinate, you discover that you already have. And people who do this chronically aren't weaker-willed. Brain imaging shows chronic procrastinators tend to have a physically larger amygdala, paired with weaker wiring to the region that's supposed to calm it down. Their alarm isn't just louder, the brake pedal is thinner. This is where most videos would tell you to just push through it. That advice fails for a specific physical reason. The part of your brain responsible for pushing through, the prefrontal cortex, is expensive to run and cheap to exhaust. When it's overloaded, something happens that sounds like science fiction but isn't. Parts of your frontal cortex begin showing sleep-like electrical activity while you are still fully awake. Neuroscientists call it local sleep. Your willpower center is, quite literally, dozing at its desk, and control quietly falls back to your basal ganglia, the part of your brain running on autopilot habits, not decisions. This is why the 10th day of a new routine feels harder than the first, even though the task hasn't changed. It's not that you got weaker. Part of the machine you were using went offline. Willpower didn't abandon you, it fell asleep at its desk. Which raises the real question underneath everything. If effort, emotion, and energy all conspire against long-term goals, how does anyone ever finish anything? Not through more willpower, through bypassing the need for it entirely. The people who consistently follow through don't have stronger internal accountants. They've simply stopped asking that accountant for permission. Psychologists call the tool implementation intentions. Absurdly simple if-then statements like, if it's 7 a.m., then I open my laptop and write. That single sentence hands control from your exhausted prefrontal cortex to your environment. The cue does the deciding, you just move. And it explains something else, the myth that perfectionists procrastinate because their standards are too high. A meta-analysis of 43 separate studies found the opposite. High standards actually prevent procrastination. What stalls people isn't wanting excellence. It's the fear of being judged for falling short of it. Never starting is the only guaranteed way to protect the fantasy that you would have been perfect if you'd only tried. So the standard was never the enemy. The fear dressed up as a standard was. Never starting isn't caution. It's the safest way to never be wrong. Here's what should actually stay with you. Every time you quit something, some part of you concluded, logically, chemically, in under a second, that you were about to spend more of yourself than the moment was worth. That's not a character flaw. That's a system built over hundreds of thousands of years to keep a fragile, energy-starved organ from bankrupting itself chasing things that might not pay off. You were never broken. You were budgeted. The failures you've been carrying around as proof of some personal defect were never that. They were a survival system doing exactly what it evolved to do. Protecting a stranger you hadn't met yet, using tools built for a world that no longer exists. The goal was never to override that system through sheer force. It was to stop treating the stranger as someone else and start building a life where showing up doesn't have to feel like a negotiation at all.